I have with me today on the podcast the very lovely lady of social work, Miss Claudia Flowers. And thank you, Claudia, for being here. Claudia and I were actually talking, just getting to know one another. She is my neighbor as well. And I said, Claudia, what do you do? She said, I'm in social work. I said, oh, I'm doing a series on MacLaren Hall. Do you know anyone who has worked there? She said, I worked there. So I said, oh, I got to have her on. So welcome to the
Thank you for having me.
And you're my second guest. I hope to get more with your help.
Okay.
Some survivors are kind of iffy about it. I think they're more comfortable talking amongst themselves than speaking with a stranger, and just trying to earn that trust is, I guess, what I'll have to struggle with, and trying to get more people on. But I definitely wanted to talk to staff from MacLaren Hall, maybe some of the attorneys that have been involved in the lawsuits and things of that nature. So when you began your career in sociology in 86, where did you see yourself starting your first job, so to speak, after graduation?
Well, I always liked I was very intrigued with the class we had where they had the dolls on the table, a girl doll and a boy doll. And class was divided in half. And the teacher said, we're going to tip this table and let both the dolls roll off. Everybody broke their neck to try and catch that girl doll. And the class should have been equally divided by saying, well, I'm closer to this doll, regardless of the gender. I'm going to grab it. But the boy doll basically failed, And I said, I had an aha moment to myself. And it really wasn't about the race riots, because at this time in 86, Rodney King, that wasn't an issue. And I went to school in Riverside. Racism is racism. But I really thought gender-wise, oh my gosh, these poor boys, boys are overlooked, in my opinion. And finished graduating, didn't really have saying I'm doing sociology to save the world, to learn society and how they are functioning. But it was kind of twofold. One, I had to declare a major before I could get my fees.
Okay.
And number two, I ran track and cross country, and the coach was like, I got a really great relationship with the sociology department. And I was like, you know what, this is coming together. So needless to say, that's how I ended up choosing that said profession. But once graduating, worked at various jobs. A friend of mine said, hey, you have a sociology major, you should apply for Maryville. And Maryville is a group home for girls. And so I was like, well, let's see, I'll try it, in which I did. And I did well, I got hired, if you would. And I was working with the girls, and they were more teenage girls. And the assumption was I was African-American, and I was probably in my 20s. And they said, oh, you'll have a great connection with the girls. You'll be able to take them out on outings. They'll respond to you. And I'm looking like, they don't respond to regular people, you all. But once I got there, it was predominantly African-American and Latino. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, okay, I see how they're doing this, but, it's a job. So it wasn't until I actually had conversations with one of my aunts. All my relatives work for the county. They said, put in your application for the county, and with your degree, I'm sure there'll be something out there for you. And at that time, they were saying MacLaren Children's Center, and I think it was MacLaren Hall at that time in the early 90s, which then later turned into, they changed the names to Children's Center. There was on a hiring freeze, someone told me. And I said, but don't worry about it. Get your application in, and this will work. You work at the group home. This is a group home setting. You'll get, as soon as they open up, you'll be able to work. And so allegedly there still was a hiring freeze. However, they were doing as needed. So they said in January of 93, we can hire you as children's social worker trainee as needed. And so I continued to do that. until I think you had to do so many months to become considered permanent. And I became a trainee permanent. So, and that's just because at that time I had the bachelor's, and that's all, quote unquote, all you needed at that time. So
when you say
that was my beginning.
trainee permanent.
No, trainee.
Mhm.
So I still was a trainee,
Okay.
but then I became permanent. So I was a trainee as needed.
Gotcha.
So, but then became permanent. And then after that, I became a CSW1, then a CSW2,
Now
then a
explain these
CSW3.
acronyms, girl.
Okay.
What is
Children's, right. Children's social worker 1,
Okay.
and then a children's social worker 2, and then a children's social worker 3.
Okay.
So, and basically the differences were at MacLaren, is how many children you were going to supervise, what kind of responsibilities they could have for you. And of course, it was the timing. So if you were just brought in as a 2, which some people have been hired in as a 2, that means they had their masters.
Okay.
So it was more of a timing, you know, so it was just like, oh, okay. And pretty much that was pretty much it, you know, just being there. They were quote unquote our work family. It was shift work. I had the shift of 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so, and what that entailed was getting the kids up in the morning, getting them to school. It was on ground school. And then of course, helping them do their lunchtime inside of the cottage, and then trying to get them to go back to school. So, so it was interesting, but needless to say, it was a lot. But once they decided, you know, we were going to close, I ended up going to into the field. So in 2003 is when I ended up ultimately leaving.
Well, yeah, because it was shut down and the whole drama happened or was happening over the course of so many years. But you said cottages, and I've noticed that as I'm researching and talking to different people, that I guess at some point MacLaren went from this huge facility that was reminiscent of a jail setting to these cottages. And what was the difference, you think?
I believe there were, and ultimately stating it was wings. So they had an A wing, a B wing, and a C wing. And so A wing, which I ended up working there as well, that was for the boys, ages 5 to about 11. B wing was for either pregnant teens that had special needs, and or young men, 16, 17, with special needs, and that were either pre-verbal, couldn't walk, some form of ailment. They were in B wing. And C wing, which they also called it Pixies, was for girls 5 to about 11. And then to the dynamics of the way the building was set up, there were cottages. So there was H cottage, F cottage, G cottage. Those were all for the boys. And boys meaning like middle school, maybe a little high school, and then for sure high school, you know. So the ages would range from 12 to 13 or 12 to 14 would be H cottage. 15, 16 would be like G. And then 17, 18 was F.
They get those names, the Pixies, and I heard Tigers and Junior
Tigers was A
Boys
wing. Junior boys was the G. G cottage. Senior boys was F cottage. H cottage was just H cottage. So, and
Tigers.
so it was like Tigers. I don't know. So the names, I don't know, but you know, I was Pixies for life because that's when I ended up leaving at Pixies, and that was the girls' cottage. It was already named that once I got there. You know, those were the names. So I physically worked in the boys' division. I want to think, I mean, as it relates to me, there were a lot of women that worked in the girls' division, but maybe because I had boys or something, for whatever the reason, they were like, you work well with the boys, that's where we're going to put you. Okay, you know, all right, work on my strengths. So I did do H cottage, and then I did A wing. And then once there were things downsizing, if you will, that's when I ended up going to C wing. So, and that's ended up working with the girls. So
now, when you say work with them, did you have any dealings with intake, and processing, or what kind of was your day like?
My day would be from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., Friday to Tuesday. So, meaning, working the weekends. So in the mornings when we would get there, there may be a child or children that have come in the middle of the night. So when they would wake up, they would have to get up and we would have to take them to go get processed to the nursing station to say, hey, look for lice, because I see lice on this child right here. I was like always the one that said, I found it. And they would say, oh, well, they looked at them last night, but, they missed it. So, of course, so I would do that. Sometimes I would be assigned to a one-on-one, and a one-on-one is one staff per child. And typically that child would be someone that maybe need a little more attention, whether it be developmental, physical, where they just needed someone to physically be with them at all times. So, and meaning all times of my shift at that time. What else? We would ensure that we would do an intake of, did they come with clothes? Did they not come with clothes? I was also in charge of shopping for some of the youth. So I would make sure I would go in our little cabinet that we had and make sure that they had an outfit. I was a very pet peeve for me is for the girls, especially, they would come, their hair wouldn't be combed. And I'd be like, let me get their hair done because they got to go to court within 72 hours. So I'm combing hair, trying to sit with them during school time, literally walking them to school, staying in class until they get situated, then go back to the cottage, quote unquote, clean up whatever I could to get ready for lunch, go back to the school, bring the kids back. It was like a day in, day out route of activities. And it would be from ranging for the AM shift, and that's what I worked, is getting them up, making sure they eat breakfast, getting them to school, getting them back for lunch, getting them back to school. And then at that time, we would leave at 2 because the kids would still be at school. So it would be a new shift to come on.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and it would be the PM shift to relieve us.
Now, did you have any issues with disciplinary action, or was that not what you did? Did someone else handle the discipline of the children if there were any problems or behavioral issues?
Well, we all were licensed, when I say licensed, or trained to utilize, say, safety measures. It was called park technique. When the children would become violent or volatile, attack a child, another youth, or try to attack staff. Unfortunately, I'd be in, I'd have to help, if you will. We had a protocol. You get the right, I get the left, you grab the legs, you hold the head steady. So it would be a whole team approach. Not as often, but it did happen. There was different things that as the rules changed, we did things differently. And, we always tried to reiterate for them to do the quote unquote right thing so they could get their rewards at the end of the day, or because they would earn points, and they had a store that the kids could get donated items, but with a price tag. So people would donate various items to the store, and the children they did great at school today. They get to go shopping, with their whatever reward. And then there was times kids were upset or angry. They couldn't go home, and the social worker may say, well, we tried to get your mom to come get you. She, of course, didn't show up. So we would be like, it's going to go down, right? So it would be very frustrating if they go to court where someone says, oh, you probably go home. If that's what the social worker said, you probably go home. And they really don't go home. So it was a lot.
Did you witness any abuse of power or abuse of kids during those situations where a child needed to be restrained?
That's twofold. Was I ever aware or saw a child be restrained? Yes. Have children sustained injury during the restraint? Yes. Have staff been injured during the restraint? Yes. All of the above. Been injured, children have sustained injury. We write what happened, detailed reports. We hadn't even been questioned by law enforcement, what happened. So it was, for career-wise, it was very scary because some of the kids would say, "You hit me." And I'd be like, "What?" I just was scratching at my face. So it was a lot, but each child that I could think of that I ever had dealings with, some have contacted me after the fact, years, and said, "I remember you, you were good to me. You're one of the good ones." You'd be like, but define good, I wasn't there in the evening. A lot of problems happened in evening because it also tails into when was abuse happening in their own lives. So we're talking about trauma that the children had to where they would act out. Bath time, we would be like, why are they acting? Look at the report. That's when the abuse happened. You know what I mean? So we were working around band-aids. We were band-aids to a lot of things. We weren't the cure. We weren't licensed, trained therapists. We weren't even behavioral interventionists, but we took trainings to try to be that. But we were just social workers that this was our job for these 8 hours. We ate with them. We took them on outings. We tried to show them where they typically may not have been exposed to, going to see Michael Jackson, going to see Magic Johnson at Hard Rock Cafe, just various different places. Having to be able to drive said vehicles, to have a special license to do said things with them, being trained at first aid, CPR. And again, like I said, part technique. Can't tell you what the acronyms were, but it was most definitely physical restraint, but with more than one person. So it wasn't just me head up with a child saying, I'm gonna hold you down. It was ready, you grab, it was a team approach. And it was always for safety reasons, to keep a child from harming himself and or others. So
now in the 90s, was there still solitary confinement for kids at MacLaren? Because that had been happening prior to.
That was probably prior to. We did have, it was called, they called it the R&R room, relaxation. Yeah. So, we tell the child, Johnny, you're not doing too good. It seems like you're upset. Why don't you go on down there, calm yourself down. Or let us remove said person that's looking at you, that's agitating you. So we did have that. I can't remember when they stopped using them, but it was between said 93 to 2003, they did stop. And it was just more of utilizing the part technique.
So other than social workers, what other type of staff were there dealing with?
Group supervisors, group supervisor night. So it's a 24-hour facility. So there were persons that were group supervisor nights, worked when the kids typically would have been asleep. Then it would be the social workers come in first thing in the mornings, along with group supervisors 1s and 2s. I think there were more so 2s. By the time I got there, they were all 2s. And they were persons that possibly had an AA degree and maybe some credits towards the bachelor's, but they just, hadn't finished, and or they did have a degree, maybe in a PhD in finance. That still would not qualify them to become a children's social worker, but they would have taken enough qualitative courses to become a GS2. So, or in another country, they're a physician in another country, but they're, just enough to be a GS2.
So
they had nursing. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
They had nurses, they had doctors on call. My favorite, Dr. Sophie, was there. That's when we first saw him coming aboard. A lot of psychologists. Everyone almost felt like it was like the teaching hospital. The various ones that you look at the names on the, like, oh, look at you, you didn't, they've moved on up, but they did all have seemed to have come through MacLaren to complete their residency or their trainings. let me see what else. We had volunteers that came in on Sundays to provide, I'm not going to say forced religion, but would have faith-based activities brought to MacLaren during the day. We had a lot of volunteers that came in, United Friends of the Children, different, Kobe Bryant in his early rookie years came out, Belle Biv DeVoe, they came out, just various people would come out to come and see the kids during holiday times and just maybe like summertime. But we would have like fun days and different celebrities would come out.
Now with the psychiatric care, did you find that children were being over medicated at some points?
I'm not going to say over medicated. So the issue, which children would come typically towards the end could come to MacLaren would be the children that were released from a hospital, 14-day hold, and they thinking their parent or their guardian or whomever had them said they can come back home. And they're like, yeah, no, they cannot. So where would they go? They would have to come to MacLaren. So, and those doctors would say, this is what we had to give them to calm them down, to quote unquote, stabilize them, and let's release them to MacLaren. So the kids would come back, not the same child, because they've tried, let's say, different medications. Let's try this, assumption. Let's try this, let's try that. Then they found, quote unquote, whatever works. And then they release them to us. And it would be like, uh-oh, she's drooling, you know, uh-oh. And then we would say, hey, doctor, whoever on call, I think we need to, you know, reevaluate what this child is on. Because I liked the child when he had personality, but not being zombie. So that would be some things that would happen. It wasn't that our doctors prescribed anything or anything like that. It would be the kids that came from a mental hospital from a, say, 72-hour to a 14-day hold. They would come and be released to MacLaren because their said relative or parent would not take them back.
So once they arrived at MacLaren under whatever that prescribed medication was or that dosage, would the doctors reevaluate at that point, or would they just keep them on?
Well, of course, we because we didn't give medications, it would be the nursing staff. The nursing staff would give until they were advised to do something different. But it would be our input, because the nurses don't know. They just come in, oh, it's time to give meds, morning meds, afternoon meds, depending on the youth. We would say something's not right. So we would be the quote unquote voice, because if this child was with us prior to going to the hospital, or not, we would remember the child. It was like a revolving door for a lot of youth that would come stay with us. They would get released to a foster family. They'd be gone a couple of months, and then they would go to a hospital and then come to us. And so we would measure from when they first came to what the time they went to the foster parent, to the time after that going directly to a hospital, and then coming back to MacLaren. Totally different child, you know. So it was a lot.
So what do you think caused that revolving door of, okay, they're at MacLaren, they go to a foster home or a group home, it doesn't work out, and I don't know what the doesn't work out is, or those situations would be, and then they would be back at MacLaren?
Again, since I wasn't the foster parent, but I would hear complaints that the placement team would say, hey, we have a child. She's 12. She's great. She'll probably do well in your home. That child would go to a foster home, new foster parent, not really, I don't know what the trainings were then, but be like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, let her sit in the front seat or whatever, and find out the child ended up still in the car. And then they're arguing, and then they're about to fight, and she's talking about she's gonna kill everybody. They call, I'm just giving you a scenario. They call the pet team. The pet team comes out, they pick up the child, and then the placement team saying, so Miss Foster Parent, you gonna take her back? No, I'm not. Come get her stuff. But she's ready for release now at the hospital. Well, who's open 24 hours? MacLaren. We couldn't turn them away, you know. So we had ended up taking them, you know, they would come back. We had a lot of AWOL population youth, meaning I don't know what the numbers were, but trust and believe around Christmas time, kids would run away, find a way to get picked up to come to MacLaren so they could get all the gifts and all the festives that MacLaren would get, from the volunteers. So they would come, get what they want to get, and then run away from MacLaren. So we had that. And that's usually the older youth.
Wow. Okay. Because I'm thinking you're running away from MacLaren Hall. You're not running away from the foster home to MacLaren Hall.
Oh, well, they knew that's what during the
gift time.
During gift time. It'd just be like, and so the complaint or if it was such a bad place in their minds, why was you coming back? Oh, you was coming back for those gifts. Okay. And then it would be Paul Mitchell, hair stuff, just, you name it. They were coming to get it, and so, yeah. So
now with all the celebrities that would come, because I think at one point, I don't know if it was the same in the 90s, there was a day designated like Celebrity Day or something like that. And
that's what I was telling you, Belle Biv DeVoe was there.
And they would come. Now, how did the children behave, or did you see a shift at all during this time when the celebrities would come out?
There would be some that sometimes the anxiety would overtake them and they couldn't go, like, you cannot let him out. He's going to have to stay on the wing. Maybe we can ask somebody to make sure they get the food, make sure they get the gifts, but you cannot be trying to fight everybody. We're not going to let you fight Kobe. You know what I mean? So there were kids that could not handle the anxiety of it all, saying Kobe Bryant or the Lakers, because Kobe wasn't not anybody, but Kobe wasn't Kobe. It was just some members of the Lakers are coming, and so there would be kids, well, I don't like basketball, or I hate you, they were just, for whatever the reason, resistant of the praise of the fun. We had a few like that. But for the most part, for those that did come out, it was almost like saying, well, interview some of the stars that came out. What was it like when you came? Kids were like, can you sign my picture? Fall asleep with the picture. I'm not washing this arm because he wrote his name on, so I mean, it was typical, oh my goodness, a star, so
now were there any whistleblowers during your time there that I guess fostered the need to investigate what was going on, especially during night shift time, as you were saying?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it more so came out once we left and we went to the field. It was like this, that, and the other. What? Because then I kept to myself. I mean, I got there at 6 and I left at 1:59, 2 o'clock. I was like, I'm out, because again, we had to eat straight. It wasn't like, well, I got a lunch break. You know what? I got a 15-minute. There were years. What is a 15-minute, 2 15-minute breaks? Oh no.
Is that legal?
No. Right. I'm sure I may have said I got a break, but we ate with the kids. So they, the kitchen staff would bring the food down, and then we're sitting there entwined, eating as a family with the children. So it wasn't like I could say, I'm finna go to Jack in the Box real quick. We ate with the kids. We worked 8 straight. It wasn't like 6 to 2:30. It was 6 to 2 and 2 to 10 and then 10 to 6. End of it.
Wow.
So,
did you know Mr. Obed?
I'm gonna be quiet. Yeah.
Okay.
I know him. Yeah, I know. Look, where I sip my coffee? Yeah, I did. He worked in A-Wing.
Okay. Well, yeah, I did hear some complaints about Mr. Obed. That's why I brought that up. But okay, we'll move on. Mr. Obed.
I will say, them kids did know the presidents. He made sure them kids learned the presidents. He taught them the presidents, and they would say it en route. It was interesting. Okay. Interesting.
All right. I'm gonna pause and start it over because it's gonna time out.
Okay.
So I don't know if I have to stop it and then invite you again, but I'll see. But
Whatever.
it's giving me like 9 minutes. So I'll get out
Okay.
and I'll jump back in.
Okay, so I'll end it. I'll come
Okay.
out.